Hello, everybody. This is part two of the authentication and authorization of using ReactJS video. And in the last video, we have seen how to basically implement a very basic token-based authentication on the client side and do a redirection after the user uh, authenticates, redirect him to the login part of the application. So now let's continue with the video and see uh, what else it is that we have to implement. So let's do a quick recap of where our application has reached. So um, let's do that through our application. So this is our application, and we see that the local storage now has this token. Let's clear this token and go back to our login page, which is the root page. Yeah. And here our username is admin and password. And once we submit, we see that the local storage now saves the token, and immediately we are redirected to the logged in page. And also we can notice that suppose I go back to the landing page or the login page, I'll instantly be redirected to the /app page. So this is essentially happening because of the redirect route, which is checking whether a token is already present or not, and instantly redirecting us to the logged in page. Um, Similarly, when we so I guess one of the next feature which we have to implement is that suppose a token is not present and we try to access a /app page. This page right now is accessible. So this again should not be accessible without the user logging in. So the way to know whether a user is logged in or not is to check whether the token exists in its local storage or not. There is no way for the client to verify or to validate whether the token is actually valid or not unless there is some route which is provided by the server to explicitly check that. And in most scenarios, it's perfectly okay to assume that the presence of a token is actually the user being authenticated. This would not cause any problems. This would not uh, let the user look at data which he is not supposed to see. If um, remember, if the server side also implements proper authorization mechanisms, which is if the token is not valid, then the data which is being requested to the server should not be respected. And in order to do that, we have to ensure that the authorization is happening uh, pretty well at the server side. And in those scenarios, the client side really need not validate the token. All it has to do is check for the presence of a token and then request the data as if everything is normal. And if the token is has been hacked or the token has been manipulated on the client side, then the server side would not respect the request and simply send an unauthorized or a not found response to the client. So that should be perfectly okay. So let's go ahead and implement the redirection back to the login page if the user is not logged in. And we have already done this. We have already done this in the previous page where we have written an is authenticated function. So let's copy this over to the cartoons directory. Um, so here we go. And we also need to copy this part of the code. Now here we go. All that we did is to copy this method is authenticated here, and in the render method we are checking if the user is already authenticated, and if he's not authenticated, in that case we are redirecting him to the path slash. Okay. Now is this code perfect? Uh, Now, I'd like to maintain a little bit of separation of concerns in the way I organize my files and folders. So that's the specific reasons why I have created these two folders, the views and the components. So the idea of the views is that this provides the layout of a given page or a given route. I know this is a single page application, but what I mean by a page is a single route. So all the layout components come inside views. So given a particular route, what are the different components that have to be rendered and how should they be laid out throughout the page? That should go into the view. Whereas in the different sections of the layout, what components have to be rendered, that logic goes within the components. So following this logic, components are very, very simple to implement. They need not worry about the application state. A component basically worries about its own state, right? So a component does not worry about whether the user is logged in or not. Whereas the views, the view components are actually the ones which worry about whether the user is logged in or not. So if we look at that rule, then the login form which we had created, here we notice that this is already worrying about whether the user is authenticated or not, which is not according to the way I would separate concerns. So what we need to do is we need to move this part of the code where it is checking whether the user is authenticated or not outside of the component and into the parent view. So the login view is basically coming from the from here, from the login view. So the login form is being included within the login component. So this is where the logic is supposed to be. Okay. So but then if we really put this logic over there, how are we going to ensure that the we are actually doing the login or not? So let's look at that very quickly. Let's provide this is authenticated function in the parent first. So is authenticated is implemented here, which is very good. And the next part of the logic is the login form will have to report a successful or a failed authentication. Okay, so how does he do this? Um, he basically does this by calling a method function. So on successful login. So on successful login, what function has to be called? So on successful login, we are going to call this dot handle successful login dot bind this. Okay, so this is the only functionality which we are actually calling here, and even so now that we have moved uh, is authenticated uh, out of the login form. Now it's time also to move these two parts of the code is already authenticated out of here and into the login function, and also the yeah, and also this part of the code out. Okay, does this work? Let's check it out. There we go. But does it work? I don't think so. Let's give it a try. Admin, password is password, and then submit. What happened? What happened? Pass an undefined or null state object. Instead, use force update. Okay, where is this coming? This is a warning. Maybe the error is something else. So let's check it out. Oh yeah. The on successful login needs to be called whenever a login is successful. So instead of calling this dot state, set state, we are going to call this dot on successful login. This dot props not on successful login, right? So this will invoke this function, and this is where we are calling this dot set state. Now let's see if this works. Yeah, first let us remove this part, remove the token, go to login, admin, password, submit, and then we see that it is redirecting properly. So is this the perfect code? Again, so yes, that's because the login form is not worrying about the application state, rather it's simply rendering the login form, and the login view is actually taking care of checking whether the user is actually logged in or not. So this is good separation of concerns, and it's always good to make sure that the component is written with as less clutter as possible. So this now is a very good code. Now, I guess the next easy function which we can implement is that of the logout functionality. So let's go ahead and implement the logout functionality. And in order to do that, let's provide a logout button. And where do we do it? So uh, here we see that there are actually two components: route exact path slash app component cartoons directory. So instead of calling this slash app, I'm going to call this slash app slash directory, which is the cartoons directory. And similarly, I'm going to create another route which is only for slash app. And this is what is going to render the app bar. And I'm going to remove exact from here. Okay. So what did I just do? So uh, uh, basically what happens is this is where my cartoons directory is present. I don't want to change my cartoons directory or provide the logout functionality within my cartoons directory. Rather, the entire application needs to have access to the logout functionality. And the way I'm implementing that is by creating another route which is slash app. So remember that slash app is a subset of slash app slash directory. And we are considering slash app as our logged in routes. Okay, any slash app route is considered as our logged in route. Okay, so when we create, when we are loading a component like app bar within the slash app route, this app bar will appear in any of the slash app routes. So this app bar is also bound to appear here. So let me show it. Let me show it to you. So we'll do this by importing the app bar from dot slash views slash app bar. And we also need to change our redirection logic um, inside of our login form. Now we have to redirect to slash app slash directory. Okay. So as you can notice, uh, this the app bar view is also appearing within the app directory. And this is happening because we have removed exact. Suppose we put exact here, then it will look for the exact match for the slash app, and in which case it doesn't appear. So we have to make sure we remove the exact app for the app bar to be visible in all the other routes which also start with slash app. Okay, so now let's go ahead and within our app bar component, we close all the other files. Yeah, and here we are going to implement the material UI's app bar. Okay, I noticed that there's a clash here with the name of the component. So the material component is also called app bar, and our view is also called as app bar. So which is not a very good idea. So let me go ahead and rename this to app bar view, and inside the index also let me import the app bar view. Say app bar view, and make sure that it's working fine. Okay, I forgot to change the import here. There we go. And the next thing which we are going to do is import the app bar from material UI slash app bar, and then use it in this fashion. App bar title icon class name right. Here we see that we now get this very nice app bar into place, which looks very interesting. So um, now what I want to do is I want to provide a logout button on the right side. So let's see how we can do that using Material UI. So here we see that there's a button to the right, which is a down button, and this uses a icon class. So this is basically using a font icon. And there is one thing, guys, that these font icons don't directly work inside your code, because these MUI docs is a class which was specifically created for the Material UI documentation. So if we were to type this exactly within our code, it's not going to work. So let's look at other ways of including the icon button on the right side. So this is one way. Um, here we are here there is an icon element left and icon element right. So in icon element left, we can see that there's an icon button which is displaying a navigation close. So this is how it will appear, and I guess the icon element right along with an icon button is what we have to use. We don't want a flat button, or in fact we can go ahead and use a flat button, so why not go ahead and do that. Um, so we are going to say um, icon element right equals icon button, sorry, flat button, and within the flat button is a self-closing tag, and we are giving this a label of logout. Let's see how this appears. Here we go. Here is our logout button, and it looks fabulous material because it's material UI. So on touch tab, let's handle logout. So this dot handle logout dot bind this, and here we are going to say local storage dot remove item token, and uh, we're going to call it this dot set state. So what is really happening here is we are uh, we are removing the item, the token from the local storage, and then we are re-rendering this component. The missing part over here is that in case the user is not authenticated, we have to redirect him back to the other part of our application, which is the login form. So let's uh, look at this. Let's take this is authenticated back into our app bar view. Redirect to slash if the user is not already authenticated, and in case he is authenticated, display the app bar. Okay, so yes, we have to enclose this within another tag, import redirect. There we go. And let's try the logout functionality. So the moment we logged in, we came back to the login page, and then slash app. If we try to access the directory directly, then we are always being redirected back to this page. Now, another interesting point to notice is that now we no longer require the cartoons directory to also check whether the user is authenticated or not. We can simply replace this whole logic with a simple H tag and remove this part as well. And this still works. Admin password, submit, and we are here. Okay. And when we log out, this takes us back. And if we try to access slash app slash directory again, it doesn't work. And also once we are authenticated, if we try to access the login page again, we are getting redirected here. So why did we have to remove this, or how did I realize that we can remove it from the cartoons directory? Well, the reason is actually quite simple. We have defined two high-level routes within the application, which is the slash route, our login route, and the app bar view route. These are the only two routes which have to worry about authentication. Okay, because all the apps that we are creating are all the routes that we are creating are actually either part of the uh, app which the user is not logged in, which basically comes over here, or the app where the user is logged in, which always starts with slash app. So this is the assumption which we made, which made our code very, very simple. So app bar view, because this is not an exact route, app bar view is rendered it within cartoons directory or any of the other routes which start with slash app, and hence This is hence writing the redirect logic or the route protection logic within the app bar view is sufficient to take us to the rest to other parts to the logout or the login route whenever the user is not logged in. And since the app bar is a very important component, implementing this within the app bar view is also a very good strategy when we are building our application. Okay. Um, so now let's go ahead and retrieve the cartoons list from our server, which for which we have to pass our token as well. And that logic we are going to write within our cartoons directory. Okay. Um, so the first method which I write is the get authentication token function, which will use the local storage dot get item function to get the authentication token and return it. Okay. And I'm going to render a paper here. And also going to write a constructor where I'm going to set the state. Initially, cartoons is empty. So this is what I'm going to set and write the logic based on this. And we are going to make use of the material table to render a nice table. And let's look at what are the different table elements. Table, table header, table body, table header row, sorry, table to row, table header column, table row column. These are different table components which we are going to use here. So we are going to change this to H2 cartoons directly and then render a table. Table contains two parts, table header and table body. The header contains table row, which contains table header column, and from our REST call we can basically uh, copy this JSON within our cartoon to make sure that it first our component renders this data properly. So table header column, the first column is ID, the second column is name or the cartoon, and the third one is creator. So we are going to follow this almost a similar structure within our table body as well. So let me copy it. The only difference is this is not going to be table header. This is going to be table row column. So this is what it is. And this is going to be this dot state dot cartoons of 0 dot id. Let me use this name and creator. Okay, so my bad. We have to use a single bracket here, and we see that the data is coming properly. Now, instead of static data, we have to iterate through the number of cartoons and create so many number of rows. So we have to iterate over this dot state dot cartoons, and we are going to map it so that for each cartoon we get a row. And we are going to use this over here, table rows. Nothing is getting displayed. Let's see why. This dot state dot cartoons dot map, we have to return table row in this fashion, and now it seems to be working fine. Okay. Now the only thing is, this data has to be retrieved from the server. Okay. So uh, initially, I'm going to set this to an empty array, in which case it doesn't show any data, and then I'm going to write a get a component will component did mount lifecycle method in order to fetch the data from the server. So I'm going to use super agent to make the Ajax call. So let's write the logic. Dot get slash API slash v1 slash cartoons dot end, and then we are setting the cartoons within the state in this fashion. Okay, but then there is one problem, however, and let me show you what the problem is. You see here that failed to load resource. Server responded with a status of 403 forbidden. Okay, that's because we have not authenticated. And let's see how we can pass a token using super agent. So let me look at the super agent library. Its documentation for this. Here we go. Dot set. However, let me confirm that set is actually used to set the headers. Where do I see a more detailed documentation? The docs. Okay, here it is. Setting header fields. So setting header fields is simple. Invoke dot set with a field name and a value. So that's what a dot set does. Uh, so we are going to set the authorization header with bearer token and get authentication token. This is what we are going to use. Okay. Now let's give it a try. Okay, we have to say this dot get authentication token, and now we see that the uh, the data is actually coming down from the server, and we also have a bunch of errors. Let's fix this quickly. So it says each child in an array or iterator should have a unique key property. This error is coming because we are iterating through all the cartoons uh, here and creating an element for each of them. Now, React has no way to know when uh, when this list or this array gets modified to know whether an item has been removed or newly added. So it uses a key attribute to determine whether an item is new or whether it's being removed or whether it's being added or whether it's already there in the list every time we make a change in the list. So that is why React uses this internally to track such kind of states. And for this reason, we have to provide a key which is a identifier for every item in the row. And here the identifier is cartoon.id. So that's what we are going to use. And you notice that that warning has gone away. There is, however, other linting errors within our code within the cartoons directory, line 5 and line 18. Styles and redirect are assigned value but never used. So this redirect is not being used. Let's remove it. And styles is not being used. So let's remove this. And we have a very clean console and our application which works fine. So now we are able to log out. We are able to log in, and that's how we have implemented our authentication and authorization. So we can also check this by deleting the token manually and then reloading the page, and it takes us to the login page. So there's no way we can now access this on the client side. However, we can cheat. We can create a token manually with some dumb value like ABC, and then reload the page, and it takes us to the uh, okay. It should have taken us inside. But anyways, let's try app directory. But it doesn't seem to work. Uh, I'm pretty sure I was able to do this some time back. Let's try it out. Okay, admin password, and we are able to get this list. Let's see if I can modify this list. I'll remove the E, the first character E from this token, save it, and then reload. Now you see that I have tampered with my token. Okay, I'm able to see the page, but I'm definitely not able to get the data. And if you see, the console says that this request is forbidden. So although I can, so that's why on the client side it's just sufficient to check the presence of a token, because the server side is supposed to enforce authorization. So suppose the token is valid, like if I revert it back to its original state and I reload the page, then you can notice that the data is coming. This is because of the token being authorized on the server side. So, uh, and for this reason, the client need not actually validate the token. It only could check for the presence of a token. That's about it. So that's all when it comes to authentication and authorization. So I would also recommend you uh, go back and change few more things within our application, which is whenever the authentication fails, like in the case that where we have changed this token like this, we have removed the initial E and reloaded, uh, we are getting 403 response. So go ahead and write the logic that when we get a 403 response, immediately redirect the user back to the login page. So that is a neat flow. And also, perhaps another thing which we could do is I remove the token, reload the page and go back to the login page. And suppose I type a wrong password, like ABC is my password. This is not going to redirect because the authentication actually fails. So look here, I say admin and ABC as the password. So this is giving me a 403 forbidden. So this is another opportunity for us to handle this error and to actually display that the authentication has failed to the user, and perhaps implement a few more uh, validations on the client side that the submit button should not be active unless the user types in his username and password. Or if you want to keep this as active, go ahead and keep it. But when the user tries to submit, then it has to show an error saying that these fields are required. So these are a few other improvements which we can make within the application. So I encourage you to go ahead and complete this. And yeah, so that's the end of this video. Thank you.